What are your standards of normal? I remember when I was a university student going on mission trips to Panama with students from across the country. And most of the time we would spend on the university campuses, but some of the time we would actually go out into some of the jungle areas, to these villages that were very isolated, that were off on their own, where people didn't have easy access to healthcare. If something emergency situation happened where they would need a hospital or a medical center, I mean, they would have to go on foot for just miles and miles and miles just to get to the closest town and then get further transportation. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have a lot of the things that we just take for granted as normal. And their homes were very, very small, and they would have families packed into these small spaces. But what struck me about my time in those villages was just how content and normal this was for the families who lived in these places. It wasn't seen as something that they were trying to escape from or needed to get out of, or that they needed more space for their large families. In fact, these people chose this life because they did, many of them, have the option, if they wanted to move into the bigger cities, but they didn't want to do that. This was normal to them. It was their standard. And so they didn't see it as lesser. They didn't see it as kind of a third world type of environment. They just saw this as their normal lives, and they were content to continue living that way. And they worked incredibly hard, harder than I've probably ever worked in my life. And that was just normal to them. You know, what's normal to you, what your standard of normal is, has much more to do with what you have experienced and what you've gotten used to and acclimatized to than it does with any actual objective standard, at least when it comes to non-moral types of things. And what I mean by that is things like the space that you have in your home, the ways that you're used to conducting your life, and the room that you create for other people or for meeting the needs that you have around you. The reason I bring this up is because I think in our Western, consumerist, materialist, comfortable world, this is one of the things that gets in the way of us living our lives fully for Jesus. Because see, the reality is that the spaces that we have in our homes alone are massive compared to most people in the world today and most people who have lived throughout history. This is not some objective standard of what we should see as normal. It's not normal, so to speak, that we have these 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 bedroom homes, these double car garages, these large living spaces that we need to fill with furniture and other things. No, friends, that's not normal. That's just what we have become acclimatized to, and so it has become our standard of what should be. And the result of that is that frequently when we're confronted with the needs that we have in our world, with the homeless person that we encounter on the street who actually is serious about change, or with the refugee who has no place to go, or just people who need places to stay, or maybe it's not even just a space issue, it's a space in your life issue with the amount of recreation time or free time that you're accustomed to having in your schedule, or just the things that you think are normal in just your kids' activities, having to fill the calendar. Whatever these things are, these standards of normal that we've created, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, is this Jesus' standard of normal? Or is this mine? Am I willing to sacrifice some of my standards of normal in order to lay down my life, take up my cross, and meet the needs of the people around me? Do I come to the needs that are presented to me and simply say, well, I just can't do that. I can't be part of the solution to this because I don't have enough rooms. I don't have enough space. I don't have enough time. Are we people who make excuses for the needs around us? Or are we people who instinctively try to come up with solutions rather than more barriers? This is my challenge for you today, friend. What are your standards of normal, and where did you get those standards? Is it possible that the heart of Jesus is a heart that says, there's no standards here. There's just, what can I do to be a part of the lives of the people around me? Whatever the cost, whatever it takes. That I could become all things to all men, so that by all means I might win some. And that includes in our standards of normal.